Welcome learners to Postgraduate Diploma in Sustainability Science in the block MSD013 Socio-Cultural System. In this session, we are going to look into the basic concept of cultural ecology. We know that the relationship between nature and culture in human society becomes the main focus of socio-cultural system in understanding the sustainability of biological and socio-cultural beings. There are ways in which we conceptualize and think about the interactional patterns of behavior amongst individuals and cultures in societies in their surrounding environment. The reflection of collective human behavioral interaction with material and non-material aspect of culture and environment becomes the common interest of everybody who wants to see the limits and capability of nature of sustainability from various change and threats. That's why we need to understand the concept of and what is the process of understanding the cultural ecology, right? So in this session, we are going to look into the concept of cultural ecology, its approaches like environmental determinism, cultural determinism, mutual interactions, where we will look into ecosystem approach, direct perception model, and a brief discussion about the how these approaches of cultural ecology has to be looked into. When we look into the concept of cultural ecology, there are different terms which are employed by different, used by different disciplines, especially in social science, in understanding the interaction between man and environment. I'm sure you must know about the term social ecology. The social ecology is predominantly found in the sociological studies, while when you talk about cultural ecology, it is very common to anthropological studies. The term cultural ecology was coined by Julian Stewart in his book Theory of Culture Change in 1955. He expressed cultural ecology is the relationship between environment and technology, the behavior patterns involved, and other cultural features affected by the behavioral pattern of the use of technology to environment. You also emphasize the cultural concept or the concept of cultural ecology core to the economic activities which are essential for subsistence, considering that it is more directly related to its environment rather than other factors of cultural institutions. So, we can say that it is the branch of ecology that deals with the interaction of human society and the natural environment. At the same time, some of the authors like K. Milton, according to him, cultural ecology was based on the assumption that cultures have evolved within their local environments, and that a close analysis of the relationship between specific cultural institutions and their local environment and features, it will reveal how and why those institutions originated and persisted. A society and its cultural values are affected by the mode of adaptation experienced by man in its environment. It is human nature and capability to utilize its surrounding environment that changes the cultural and social apparatus of an area. And in due course of time, it becomes distinct or recognized as separate entity. So, the study of the basic adjustment brought about by such adaptive nature of man that can be called as cultural ecology, right? The cultural ecology can be studied on the basis of environment and culture, and on the basis of how environment and culture interact. We will find many studies that respond to different aspects. However, there is always common points among them. So looking from, as a student of sustainability science, that the approaches to cultural ecology can be understood through three important approaches. One is environmental determinism, second cultural determinism, and mutual interaction. As we know that when we are trying to look at different approaches to cultural ecology, we have to study the cultural ecology on the basis of environment and culture, and on the basis of how environment and culture interact. We find many studies respond to different aspects. However, there is always common points among them that can be looked into, or that can be from the lens of, or from understanding this cultural ecology in the approaches of environmental determinism, cultural determinism, and mutual interactions. In short, we can say that, and if you look into the process, that cultural ecology explains different views of ecology, in which environment determines culture, culture determines environments, as well as reciprocity of determinants, that is culture and environment. If you look into the process of environmental determinism, in this term, first, determinism, it deals with the role of environment, in which environment is determining human society and culture. Now, it is the prime mover in bringing human affairs into the form of a culture and its organization. Environment brings a structure or changes in religion, government, material culture, personality, family, marriage, kinship, etc. And a consequence of the interplay between the environment and culture. The idea is simple, that environment plays an active role in shaping culture and cultural pattern of a society, whereas the culture remains a passive actor. If you look into the earliest theory that used in explaining the that nature-human relationship, we will find out that the ideas of environmental determinism were given by Greek and Roman scholars like Hippocrates, Pliny, and Cicero. In the 18th century, there were questions on the early relationship of environment or climate with human as well as with all other living beings. After this, a significant change was brought in the 19th and early 20th centuries in the academic platform. So, in that time, it was focused on the process of change of human cultural history through ecological and ethnological data, which was explained by the process of migration and cultural diversity. So, the environmental determinists supported the idea of superseding environmental forms over culture forms. Hence, under similar environmental condition, we find similar technology as well as similar socio-cultural system. This can also be substantiated by the concept of the psychic unity of mankind of the early 20th century concept, where people develop similar mentality, thinking capabilities, or culture under the same environmental conditions. Contribution of different authors like Ritzel and Huntington, they are geographers. They express the effect of nature on human behavior, which is direct or one-to-one relationship between environment and culture, that given the importance of environment and climate in the successful evolution of culture and economic development. So, this approach of study was supported by another academic, Julian Stewart, and in his theory of culture change. Julian Stewart's theory talks about ecologically determined culture core consisting of features which were clustered around subsistence economic activities, that is utilization of environment. This was again considered to be directly linked to environmental factors than others. So, some cultural features were more closely related to society's environment than it became quite influential in shaping the culture development. So he suggested shaping of specific culture features by specific environment features rather than environment and shaping that environment that shape whole cultures, right? So many anthropologists, geographers, they study the distribution of various cultural traits, and some of those anthropologists and geographers, they use the concept of culture area and common culture as the basis to categorize the diverse population existing in similar environmental conditions, like Clark, Whistler, and Crover. Even though many scholars across the world studied environmental features of determining culture, fallacies came up such as emergencies of same culture in different environment and different cultures in the same environment. So, one of the author, Milton, in 1996 noted that various aspects of social life, system of exchange, marriage rules, kinship terminologies, political institutions, and much else differ unpredictably within areas whose topography and climate are more or less similar. So, the proposition of environmental determinism does not hold true in all cases. So, environment does not consider playing an important role in shaping the culture. So, the cultural patterns and its analysis are of great importance in the understanding of human society. So, with the decline of environmental determinism in the 20th century, the focus of explanation of a society and its relation with environment has shifted to the concept of environmental possibilism. Then coming to the second approach is of cultural determinism approach. Here, we know that a society's environment has a dynamic nature of different settings when people constantly interact with it. It is in contrast to the concept of environmental determinism if you look into how cultural determinism approach express it. According to some author, the actions of individual persons are determined by their culture. This culture can also be molded a given environment through its power of thoughts and learners' behavior. The attributes of historical and cultural influence is also are also determinants of a specific cultural phenomenon. So, one of the author Hardesty has explained the importance of environment in explaining why certain cultures did not occur rather than why they did occur. So, this concept of explaining culture becomes becomes the hallmark of possibilism. So, if you look into possibilism, it's considered that culture are molded by environment but not caused by it. So, the socio-cultural construct of man establishes relationship between organism and the surrounding environment, altering the already existing relationship. So, this new way of life brought certain changes in the cultural behavior of man and his position in the ecological niche, right? So, this theory, this cultural determinants are that is as opposed to determinism gives emphasis the action of man with regard to environment, right? Man occupies the front seat in the interactional pattern of existing human ecology that provided that the environment gives a set of opportunities or possibilities of scope, right? So, this is usually ashes and the possible one has been chosen. However, if you look into this mode of selection, and this mode of selection is always limited even though there is increased level of technological that implementation and the means it handle it. Some of the example of the possibilist approach culture is the question of environmental factors and effects to success or failures of a society. A determinist may argue that society keeps on continuing till the moment one gets the limited supply of natural resources. So the possibilist view that human actions result into various institutions and cultural products and also maintain to capture the possibilities that still occur in lieu of environmental limitation. So this human action is created as a causal factor in the success or failure of a society, while environment acts at the periphery. Some of the example of this maybe you will find out literature of the argument by Crovos on maize cultivation in native. The southwestern Indian did not farm because nature induced them to make the invention. They did not make the invention at all. A faraway people made it, and from them it was transmitted to the southwest through a series of tribal contacts. This context, which constitute the specific cause of southwest agriculture, constitute a human social factor, a cultural or civilizational factor. At the same time, climatic or physical environment did not enter into it at all, except of render agriculture somewhat difficult in that arid southwest area. Had the southwest been thoroughly desert, agriculture could not have got a foothold there. But this would be only limited condition. The active or the positive causes that brought about southwest agriculture are its invention rather south, the spread of the invention to the north, and its acceptance there. This is what exactly L. Grover that would mention in his argument on maize cultivation in native North America, right? And coming to the third approach, mutual interaction. The relationship between man and environment, it has become a debatable issue among various thinkers. There was a dilemma of deciding whether one should go for the determinism or possibilism. Suppose, if a man has to develop a technique of soil conservation, then has it to be considered as a determinist, possibilist, or can it be taken as both? One is that the environment has directed the man to develop a technique to control soil, and man has become the expertise in controlling the unpleasant nature's attitudes. So whether such an act would symbolize determinism or possibilism, it's a very difficult notion. So the approach seeking beyond this relation is how both actions reciprocate one another. Instead of considering environment as a detrimental factor or human beings shaping environment via culture, it is understood that man-environment interaction is in mutually constitutive ways. So it is in this process culture acts as a mechanism through which human beings as well as other organisms interact with one another in a given environment. So this can be explained by two models in particular, as we know. One is ecosystem approach, another is direct perception approach. When we talk about ecosystem approach, we know that in previous sessions, in some previous session of MSD 012, or postgraduate diploma in sustainable science, the term ecosystem was used in the early 1930s and 1940s by the work of that ecologist Stanley, Odom, and others biologists. In 1960s, social scientists started using this concept in various arenas. It has been considered as the interactive nature of relationship between human beings and its environment. Many definitions has been provided by different authors in understanding of the interactional patterns. For example, Rappaport, in his way of understanding this, what he proposes that both living and non-living substances are required to exchange the materials that are also within a limited territory or biosphere, while different authors like Hardesty stresses on a limited, on a dynamic set of relationship between living and non-living things, provided that energy flow and material exchange. So in the same way, different few of the authors or academics, they focuses on the process of homeostasis when exchanging the material as well as energy flow. We know that homeostasis is the process of maintaining a balance in the material exchange and energy, that energy flow during the interactional process of human beings and its environment. When you look into the ecosystem, we know that it consists of human beings, environment, culture, plants, animals, and organisms. So the interactional patterns of this component it forms a network of relationship that frequently leads to certain dimensions. So human beings always adapt to habitat and try to adjust to the different vagaries of environment at its best level. So the environment that impinges on human beings consists of biotic and abiotic components. So culture becomes a part of man-environment complex and holds a strong position reflecting over the structure. So these components become interdependent with one another. That a change in one leads to a change in the other. So it is possible to say that all these individual components function as a single unit through a complex network, or what's generally termed as food chain in biology. So in this ecosystem approach, the most important contribution is the promotion of a holistic nature of studying the interactional pattern between organisms and its environment through exchange of materials and energy flow. It deals with the mutual interactions of components within a system, where an emphasis on a particular species or component has brought the risk of losing the nature of homeostasis or the risk of disturbing the already existing stability in the whole structure of network. However, through various studies and opinions, what we find in the literature is that in the while studying ecosystem, human population becomes a principal unit of analysis occupying ecological needs, while the concept of culture becomes marginal provided that ecosystem model was developed and refined by different biologists. Although the study of culture is an ecosystem seems to be unnecessary to biologists and might logically emerge to sequence to squeeze that culture out of reckoning. This has been denied by social scientists that pose a questions to the understanding of the term culture in human ecology. So idea here is that culture is present as a part of human contribution to this network. It is the means or activities human beings employ to continue the process. However, this concept has been narrowed down to represent human beings' involvement. What has been considered marginally that marginal act to understand man's role and suggest their action. So the ecosystem approach consists of some essential components besides the material actions in energy. According to Elan, the distinctiveness of human ecology is culture, the information, people's knowledge and decision making process, which are considered as the mechanistic explanation of it. Then coming to the mutual one of the that model of mutual interaction is direct perception model. We know that there are diverse ways of understanding the world. People understand and impose the meaning of the world through cognitive processes. There is no meaning for human beings to interact with the environment. This constructivist nature of culture does not fit to human ecology, as it reduces environment into mere cultural construct. So consideration of environment as perceptions and interpretations of the constructed idea of culture by different social scientists or few of social scientists create a gap in understanding of the concept as well as relationship between environment and culture or activities of human. Culture ecologists like Tim Gold. According to him, there is no way where information can flow from real world to perceived world. He suggested that perception should be seen as different from interpretation. People do not need to construct reality in order to perceive it. Rather, perception happens directly through one's active involvement in it. Similarly, people do not need to know the world in order to act in it. Rather, it has been known through one's action by making use of what has been offered by environment. It is considered that direct perception of environment and people with some cognitive thoughts happens only when there is active involvement in the system. So perception is the creation of knowledge through actions, and the world has been perceived into beings as people act on it. So culture does not consist of whatever one is supposed to know or believe, but it is a means of for making knowledge explicit to all. The role of culture in human-environment relations can now be explained as consisting perception as well as interpretations. It does not produce a barrier, instead give a place within the world. So it is culture which explains the meaning and actions together. So the direct perception model signifies an understanding of man-environment relationship through perceptions and interpretations. And if you are looking into all this model, we can give some conclusion based on all these models that the nature of interaction between man and environment has been expressed by the use of ecological knowledge, right? So the recognition is that different approaches and theories exist, and the understanding and analysis of it really enable us to reach to a conclusion which is applicable to all. The view that environment determines culture or culture determines environment, this opens a scope for critical analysis at various forums. People overlooked these ideas and started looking for an approach where both the views are balanced. So mutual interactions provide equilibrium at the level of their interaction and focuses on those approaches which leave culture out of human-environment relationship either deliberately or by default. So the two approaches, what we talk today on, ecosystem approach and direct perception approach, or we call ecological factionalism, provide a logic of understanding man-environment relationship through the network of relations involving material actions and energy flow, as well as the active involvement into it and to interpret the concept of perception. Here, the important point is that even if we marginalize the concept of culture in this approaches, the culture is still present in the ecosystem model, in any case represented by the human actions and role in it. Thus, a mutual relationship among the various factors of man-environment relationship gives a homeostasis to human ecology. However, if you look into whatever we have in our understanding, there is still scope of criticism on it, especially on the explanation given by the ecological functionalism on homeostatic balance of environment through adaptation. The interactive point of view, which some of the authors like Stewart propound that in man-environment relationship is still associated with back ideas on subsistence overlooking other domains of adaptation and adaptive mechanism. Later on, various approaches have been developed to understand man-nature relationships such as, ethnobiology, historical ecology, political ecology, and behavioral ecology. That's why we need to understand the other, as a student of sustainability science, basic concept of political ecology also, behavioral ecology also, because they occupies a prominent place when we study the cultural ecology, when we study the sustainability, issues of sustainability, right, especially in sociocultural study. So if we summarize this session, that what we learn in this session is that the term ecology deals with the knowledge of how environment and technology play important role in shaping human behavior, right. This is exactly what we learn, the concept of cultural ecology, right. Environmental determinism, cultural determinism, and mutual interaction are the three approaches explaining human ecology. Environmental determinism points out the role and the capability of environment in controlling human society and culture. Culture becomes the hallmark of environment possibilism, where culture has been molded by environment but not caused by it. It gives emphasis on the action of man, which provides success and failure of societies, while environment against the marginal. So at the same time, the mutual interaction is again supported and explained by the ecosystem and direct perception approach that man-environment interaction has been brought to a stage of stability to the material exchange. So in this session, we have learned about the concept of cultural ecology, the different approaches to cultural ecology, especially three major approaches. What that is environmental determinism, cultural determinism, mutual interaction. In mutual interaction, we have looked into two basic models, that is ecosystem approach model, direct perception model. That's all for this session. Thank you very much. See you in the